Brothers, the last point which I made was that Mark often uses the sandwich construction in his gospel. But before that, I want to answer a question which was asked so that everyone can benefit with this question and answer. And the question was that I said that Mark chapter 6, verse 3 earlier on in the 6th point, which you see on the screen, in chapter 6, verse 3, when Jesus is referred to as Son of Mary, I said it was an insult. However, the question is, could it not also be as something with regard to information and not really an insult? That, yes, would have been the case and is the case in the Gospel of Matthew, but in Mark, when you read the context of how Jesus is called Son of Mary, who he is called Son of Mary by, why they call him Son of Mary is told a little later, when we are told, and they took offense at him. So to answer the question, though there are some who do not see that this is an offending title to Jesus, I see it clearly as an offending title more when we come to Mark chapter 6, verses 1 to 6a. We shall see that in detail. But now, when you read the context, very clearly Mark says, and they took offense at him. That means they were upset with him. They took offense at him. That is why I said Son of Mary is a derogatory title. It is an insulting title. Coming now to the sandwich construction. On 6 clear occasions, Mark uses what is known as the sandwich construction and not used by Matthew and Luke in most of these cases. In some cases, they copy from Mark, but in most cases, they do not use the sandwich construction, and the sandwich construction is exclusive or special to Mark. What is the sandwich construction? The first sandwich construction is noticed in chapter 3, verses 20 to 21, where the family of Jesus, and I'm using the term physical family of Jesus, you might say the blood relatives. We are told his mother and brothers, and by that mother and brothers is meant the blood relatives. They wait outside because they were told that he is out of his mind. They were told that he had gone mad. So in verses 20 and 21 of chapter 3, we are told that the family of Jesus, the physical family of Jesus, the mother and brothers, they come to restrain him. The word restrain means come to restrict him, come to take him home. Now notice, after verse 20, there is a break. And that break is up to chapter 3, verse 31. And again, in those verses in chapter 3, verses 31 to 35, Jesus speaks of really who his family is. What Jesus is saying there is that the family can be those who are related by blood, but not necessarily. And this is made clear when we look at the meat of the sandwich. We can call this Beelzebul controversy, the meat of the sandwich. So when we look at the meat of the sandwich, which is the Beelzebul controversy, namely when Jesus is accused of casting out demons by Beelzebul, the prince of demons, we can see why Mark has got this sandwich construction. Mark is saying it is not only outsiders, it is not only the scribes who come from Jerusalem. In Mark 3:22, very clearly we are told the scribes have come from Jerusalem. So Mark is saying, be careful. It is not merely outsiders. It is not merely scribes who come from far away Jerusalem into Galilee. It's not only those who can accuse Jesus of doing miracles by the prince of demons, Beelzebul. It can be the family also. So by giving us this sandwich construction, what Mark is saying is this: that just because you are a blood relative does not mean that you are related to Jesus. More than that, through this sandwich construction, Mark is saying, even though you may be a blood relative, you can still you can still be guilty of accusing Jesus of doing what he does by the power of Beelzebul. And then, within the same context, Jesus teaches in Mark what true family is. Family or relations with Jesus are based on the ones who do the will of God. So if you do God's will, then surely you will not accuse Jesus of being on Beelzebul's side, because you're on God's side and God is opposed to Beelzebul. Secondly, you will be really and truly related to Jesus. This is the first of the 6 sandwich constructions. The second sandwich construction is again only in the Gospel of Mark, because in the Gospel of Matthew, the girl is already dead. Now, Mark, we are told that Jairus, Mark gives us the name, just like Luke also gives us the name. Matthew does not give us the name, but we are told in Mark that Jairus, a synagogue official, his daughter is sick. He comes to Jesus and requests Jesus to come with him because his daughter is sick and at the point of death. And he even tells Jesus that if Jesus lays his hands on the girl will live. He is confident. Now, Jesus, notice chapter 24. The next time we are told about Jairus' daughter is in chapter 5, verse 35. What happens in between? In between are 10 verses 25 to 34, 10 verses in which Mark interrupts the story to tell us another story. And the other story is about the woman with the hemorrhage, or the woman with the flow of blood. This woman has touched the garment of Jesus because she had faith. And she said to herself, if I touch the garment of Jesus, I will be healed. Her faith is what cured her. And she does it. And then Jesus looks around. Jairus is telling him that his daughter is at the point of death and asking him, please come and lay your hands on her and she will live, she will not die. And Jesus starts going with him. When this woman touches him, he realizes power has gone out of him. So he keeps on looking around, and we say, as readers of the story, Lord, please go with Jairus. Please go with Jairus. Please go with Jairus and reach Jairus' house before the girl dies. And Jesus is in no hurry whatever. So we notice this sandwich construction is deliberate by Mark to heighten the suspense. Will Jesus reach before the girl dies? Will Jesus reach and save the girl from death? Because up to now, we have seen Jesus can exorcise demons. He can cure paralytics. He can cure the withered arm. He can cure the storm. We have seen all of that, but we don't know yet. We do not know yet whether Jesus can raise the dead. And so we are anxious. Will Jesus reach? And here Jesus is in no hurry whatever. So he's looking around him, who touched me? And Peter is saying, Lord, there are so many people who are touching you. How can you ask the question? He says, no, somebody touched me. And he's looking, and we want him to hurry. Lord, do not tarry, hurry. And then when Jesus finally reaches Jairus' house, after all of this tamasha, you might say, we find that the girl is there. As a matter of fact, even as Jesus is moving now toward Jairus' house the second time, the people come and say, don't trouble the teacher any longer. So very clearly, they have given us a hint as to what is going to happen. The girl is not going to be raised. Don't trouble the teacher. You troubled him enough by asking him to come and lay his hands on her, and she may have lived if he laid his hands on her, because he has cured the sick, possibly even those who are at the point of death. But now the girl is dead. The mourners have been called. The flute players are all there. Everyone is there. So why trouble the teacher? So this sandwich construction of Mark is to heighten the suspense. A third sandwich construction is when the disciples are sent on mission. The disciples are sent on mission in the Gospel of Mark, and the disciples return from mission. Mark and Luke are the only evangelists who show the disciples returning from mission. Matthew does not show them going, neither does he show them returning, because in Matthew, Jesus is the only true missionary. The disciples are given tremendous instructions in chapter 10 of the Gospel of Matthew, 42 verses of instructions in Matthew chapter 10. But after giving all those instructions, Jesus goes, the disciples do not go. Because for the Matthean Jesus is the only true missionary. The disciples will go on mission when the risen Jesus on the mountain in Galilee gives them a commission to be missionaries to the whole world. Here in Mark, the disciples are sent on mission and they return successfully from mission, and they're very excited to tell Jesus all that they did and said. And in between the sending and the return, Mark has placed the beheading of John the Baptist. So what Mark is saying through this sandwich construction is this, that yes, sometimes mission will be successful. Sometimes you will be excited that everything has gone according to plan, like the disciples do in this case. However, Mark is cautioning the disciples, Mark is cautioning about mission, that not every time will this be the case. Sometimes, if you are faithful to mission, if you are focused on mission, your fate will be the fate of John the Baptist. So this is the third sandwich construction. Now, in the fourth, in the fifth, and in the sixth sandwich construction, which I have given you here, namely the fig tree is cursed, the temple is cleared. Notice my words. I use these words deliberately. I don't say cleansed, and I'll tell you why I say cleared and not cleansed. The fig tree is cursed, the temple is cleared, and the fig tree withers. In chapter 14, I've not put that down because I want you to look at the sandwich construction and put down what you think would be the words you would use and how you see that as a sandwich construction. And also, when you go through chapter 14, verses 53 and 54, and verses 66 to 72, what you see on either side of chapter 14, 55 to 65, and what do you think is the reason why Mark has these sandwich constructions. In the three that you see above, which I have explained, I have given you an insight into what the sandwich construction might mean. It does not mean the same thing every time, but the main purpose of a sandwich construction is to give a deeper meaning to both the incidents. So, if I were to define a sandwich construction, this is what I would say. A sandwich construction is a method of writing when the evangelist begins an incident, interrupts that incident with another whole incident, and then continues the first incident and completes it. Let us see this definition in the case of this. The sandwich construction is a construction or a way of writing in which the evangelist begins an incident, interrupts it with another whole incident, and then continues and completes the first incident. Why is this done? It is done for a variety of reasons, But the prime reason why it is done is to give both those incidents a deeper meaning than they would have given if they had been narrated by themselves. So if you keep this definition in mind, you will get an insight into the three sandwich constructions which you can do for homework. And so now, to begin our study, I would say the Gospel of Mark is a novel. And when I say novel, I mean story. Not only is the Gospel of Mark a story, it is also a mystery story. And the mystery is, and this was recognized by Wilhelm Reed in The Messianic Secret, the mystery of this story is who Jesus is. The mystery of the story is not merely who Jesus is, but more importantly, what kind of a Messiah is Jesus? What kind of a Christos is Jesus? What kind of an anointed one is Jesus? Notice the term Messiah is the Hebrew term, which is translated into Greek as Christos, which is translated into English as anointed one. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verses 27 to 30, which is the watershed of the Gospel of Mark, Jesus asks two questions of his disciples. The first is, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And then, who do you say I am? Now, this question is not merely to be translated, but who do you say I am? Rather, this is how it ought to be translated, because the you, which is plural, not singular, Jesus is asking all the disciples, but you, he said to them, who do you say I am? So in other words, the you is repeated. It is said twice, but you, he said to them, who do you say I am? And on behalf of the disciples, it is Simon Peter who answers in the Gospel of Mark, you are the Christ. That's all. Or if he was speaking Hebrew, you are the Messiah. Or if he was speaking English, you are the anointed one. This is Peter's answer in the Gospel of Mark. In Matthew 16, 16 to 19, the answer of Simon Peter is, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. So the Matthean Peter adds something to Christ. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Luke will make it explicit about the kind of Christ which Jesus is when he says, you are the Christ of God. You notice? With the exception of Mark, who simply has Peter say, you are the Christ. Matthew, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Luke, you are the Christ of God. So both Matthew and Luke explicate, explain Peter's answer. Mark does not. That is the mystery of Mark. This is how Mark brings out the mystery. So you've got to be very attentive when you read Mark and those chapters and verses in which Matthew and Luke have taken from Mark. You will notice Mark's novelty when you compare them. And that is why it is necessary to have the gospel parallels. Like in this case, if you had the gospel parallels, you can see very clearly that Mark's answer, or rather the Peter's answer in Mark, is short. You are the Christ. In Matthew, it's longer. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. In Luke, it is also explaining you are the Christ of God, because this term Messiah was also used of kings. So what Luke is saying, you are not just a king, you are the Christ. You are the anointed one, you are the king, but of God. And Matthew is saying you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. So very clearly, when the Markan Peter says, you are the Messiah, or you are the Christ, or you are the anointed one, he does not explicate, he does not explain. So will Peter's answer be the kind of Messiah Jesus is? Will Peter's answer be the answer which corresponds to what Jesus thinks of himself? That is the question which Mark poses. So keep this question constantly at the back of your mind. What kind of a Messiah is Jesus? And Mark unravels this mystery. So keep this mystery of the gospel in your mind. Whenever you read any text, let this mystery be at the background of your mind. And this mystery is unraveled by Mark through using two strategies. And the first strategy is what is known as the command to silence. In some instances, when Jesus heals a person, in some instances, when people witness a healing or a cure or a raising some, Jesus says, don't tell anyone. The moment Peter responds in 8:29, you are the Christ, Jesus sternly commanded them not to tell anyone about this. This is known as the command to silence. However, in some cases, like for example, in the case of the healing of the Gerasene demoniac, Mark 5:1-20, Jesus says to him, go and tell what Jesus or what God has done for you. He tells the man, he makes him a missionary. He makes him a missionary in Gentile territory. So there are cases in which Jesus does not give the command to silence. There are cases when it is absurd that Jesus gives the command to silence, like in the case of the raising of Jairus' daughter. In Mark chapter 5, verse 43, and before that we know that before Jesus enters Jairus' house, there are the flute players, there are the mourners, and they all see Jesus. And even when he tells them the girl is not dead, she's only sleeping, they laugh at him. So they know that the girl is dead. And yet in Mark 5:43, when Jesus raises the girl, he tells them, that is Peter, James, and John, whom he takes with him, and the parents of the girl, he tells them not to tell anyone about it, but to give us something to eat. So very strange. But what do you mean, don't tell anyone about it, when people already know? They have come there to mourn because the girl is dead. And how will you not tell them? They already know. So this is the absurdity. And this is the key, you might say. This is the command to silence. And we shall see what that means when we come to the text. The second manner, or the second strategy which Mark uses, is the strategy of misunderstanding. So there are people who misunderstand Jesus totally. As a matter of fact, it would not be an exaggeration to say that in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is understood by no one. It would not be an exaggeration to say that in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is understood by no one, or he is misunderstood by everyone.